It's always the obvious questions that are so vigorously discouraged. And one of the questions that's been the most discouraged over the past 30 years are, what are those lines in the sky that you see trailing jets? What is that? Some people call them chemtrails, claim that somehow the U.S. government is spraying poison on the population. Those people are clearly crazy. Wikipedia calls them crazy. Every news outlet calls them crazy. But the trails are still there. And it's clearly not water vapor, because that doesn't make sense at all. So what are they? We've spent the last 6 months trying to find someone credible who could explain that to us. A serious, sane person with an engineering background who could tell us, what are we looking at? Because we're looking at something. And I don't care what names you call me. I still want to know what it is. And we think we have found that person. Dane Wigington of Northern California has been on this subject for almost 30 years and has compiled what we believe, after looking at it pretty carefully, is the most comprehensive account of what we're seeing. And it's very bad. Dane, thanks a lot for joining us. I never knew what to think of this topic, chemtrails or contrails, or the stripes in the sky that linger after airplanes pass. I don't remember them as a child. They're very common now. I've heard people say there's something nefarious going on. So I go to Wikipedia to see what they say, and I want to read you the Wikipedia entry, the first part of it, on this question, okay? You may have seen this, and I'm quoting from Wikipedia as of this morning. The chemtrail conspiracy theory is the erroneous belief that long-lasting condensation trails left in the sky by high-flying aircraft are actually, quote, chemtrails, consisting of chemical or biological agents sprayed for nefarious purposes undisclosed to the general public, period. Believers in this conspiracy theory say that while normal contrails dissipate relatively quickly, contrails that linger must contain additional substances. Those who subscribe to the theory speculate that the purpose of the chemical release may be solar radiation management, weather modification, psychological manipulation, human population control, biological or chemical warfare, or testing of a biological or chemical agent on the population, and that the trails are causing respiratory illnesses and other health problems. So I read that, and the purpose, of course, of that paragraph is not to illuminate what this might be, but to attack anyone who speculates about what it might be. It's a form itself of psychological warfare, of propaganda. And when I read that, I said to myself, there's clearly something going on, because the people who control Wikipedia, which would be the intel agencies, as we know, don't want anyone to talk about this. So with that lengthy preface explaining why this conversation is taking place, I will turn it over to you to explain, what are these lines in the sky that we have all seen?
There's sprayed particulate dispersion. There is no theory in this equation. Bottom line is, when we have up-close film footage of these aircraft at altitude, KC-10s, KC-135s, C-17 Globemasters, with nozzles visible turning dispersions on and off. This is not, quote, condensation. Geoengineeringwatch.org is the only entity that has taken a NOAA flying lab, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab, top scientists in it, to sample what these heavy aircraft are emitting at altitude. That sample was processed at Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York, one of the world's most renowned testing institutions. We found exactly what we knew we would find, starting with aluminum nanoparticles. Bioavailable freeform aluminum is toxic to all life, period. That element is named in numerous climate engineering patents as part of a geoengineering dispersion element. So again, there's no theory involved in any of this. And what's so incredibly profound in this equation, Tucker, you have the entire global climate science community, governments all over the world saying we need to put aircraft in the air immediately to disperse light scattering particles. And we use the science terms at geoengineeringwatch.org, because the chemtrails term is the instant marginalization term by design. You bring that term up, any elected official won't talk to you anymore. Media will immediately marginalize you. Solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection, cloud albedo enhancement, climate engineering. If we stick to the science terms, they can't marginalize us. So again, this elephant in the sky that we're told is a conspiracy theory is exactly what the entire global climate science community says we need to deploy immediately to slow down the warming of the planet. Stated purpose to deflect some of the sun's incoming thermal energy. We know these programs, not surprisingly, are making a bad situation worse, not better. And, Tucker, they're being used as a form of warfare. And we know that. We have countries like Iran, constantly demonized, of course, as you well know. Immediately after 9/11, we have the list of countries to be targeted given to General Wesley Clark, a list that clearly existed before 9/11 even occurred. Subsequently, every one of those countries, every one of them endured a once in 1,000 year drought. Statistically, mathematically, that's impossible without climate intervention operations. And we have the leader of Iran on the floor of the UN, on film, on the record, stating NATO was cutting off their precipitation. We have Iranian top scientists recently stating NATO's been doing this for 40 years, destabilize the food supply by destabilizing the rain, and you destabilize the population.
So you just said a bunch of amazing things, all of which I just want to say sound plausible to me. But let's just back up a little bit. So you're calling this geoengineering. The term, the term chemtrails, you say, is a propaganda term designed to discredit people who ask sincere questions about what the hell am I looking at. So,
correct, because if they Google that term, they'll get what you got. And that's what we try to avoid. If anybody is unfamiliar with the issue and they Google that term, that's the end of their search, most likely. So we try to point chess, semantics matter in this case. Okay,
so the first line of the Wikipedia entry points out something true, which is that when you look at these lines in the sky and you're told, well, it's just condensation, it's water vapor, you know that maybe that's not the right explanation because water vapor dissipates and doesn't remain in the sky for like 20 minutes after the plane leaves. So that suggests bigger particles in the mist, the particulate matter in the mist. Is that correct?
Exactly correct. If you see, for example, breath condensing, if you see some researchers in the Arctic and their breath is condensing because it's very cold, do they get a cloud starting to form over their head? If you have a vehicle that's exhaust is condensing in the morning, you have a freeway with giant clouds hanging over it from the condensation from the vehicles in some cold region? No, that's not how condensation behaves. And again, my journey into this whole battle of now 27 years, but when I built my off-grid home in Northern California, middle of the wilderness, it was the cover of the world's largest renewable energy magazine. I have solar, wind, and hydro. And I was losing on some days from what these aircraft were emitting 50, 60, even 70% of my solar uptake from what these aircraft were emitting. I knew that could not be condensation. When I began to research, I was very surprised at the mountain of information on geoengineering, solar radiation management. And I looked for primary elements. I began to test my precipitation. I hoped I would not find these elements in my rain because I knew if I did, it would change the entire course of my life. I cannot look the other way. I came up with 7 parts per billion in my first rain test over the next 18 months because I took that long in researching before I was willing to speak out on this issue. At the end of 18 months, I had single rain events with 3,450 parts per billion of aluminum in my rain. This is bioavailable free-form aluminum, which is toxic to all life forms, period. Primary element named in climate engineering patents, and we have the world's most recognized geoengineers specifically stating on film, on the record, their goal of using aluminum in these programs because of its high reflectivity with no consideration of the consequences. That's how I got into this battle.
So if I understand what you're saying, what we're watching is an attempt, I assume by governments, and we'll get into who's doing this, to mitigate the effects of climate change, to reflect back rays from the sun so that the earth doesn't warm at a pace that is dangerous to whatever they think it's dangerous to. But this is a global warming mitigation effort. Is that correct?
That is the stated purpose. We know this is...
That is the stated purpose. So I think that's plausible because there is so much energy, commitment, sincere commitment in some cases, obviously fake commitment in others, and so much money behind this effort to mitigate global warming that makes absolute sense. It is a religion. And you're saying that you were not originally aware of this or interested in it, but because you live off grid and you derive a lot of your electricity from solar and you clearly have an engineer brain, you were wondering, like, why the hell is my solar not working correctly? And that got you into this process of learning about it?
Correct. And I have friends in the solar industry and who, off the record, inform me that some of the commercial solar plants are producing half their design output. And they won't talk about why, because they don't want to lose subsidies. So again, this is a very known element in many fields. In fact, with the nation's weathermen, National Weather Service and NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, there is an illegal federal gag order on all agency operations with those two entities. Why would our government feel the need to gag the weathermen? I had a NOAA scientist state to my face, quote, "We all know this is going on. We have no First Amendment protection. We don't know what to do." So the bottom line is, let's all just pretend this isn't going on while it's virtually dismantling the planet's primary life support systems and ubiquitously contaminating everything everywhere. I'm not just talking about aluminum. We have in lab tests. And again, we've done hundreds of lab tests. We did 500 working with the University of Minnesota, an internationally recognized agricultural institution. We have aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, surfactants, polymer fibers, graphene, all of this coming down in our breathable air column, Tucker.
That's horrifying.